and a master's in science and geology from the University of Wyoming. Worked 8 years for Chevron Oil, and then 17 years as a public at a public college in Michigan before going to the Institute for Creation Science in Dallas, Texas, my old stomping grounds there. And he has been there for 8 years and is the author of several books, and also on dinosaurs and geology and the flood, which is what he's going to be talking about tonight. So we're in for a treat. We were talking beforehand about some of the research that he's going to be sharing with you that no one else has been doing. And I tell you what, you're in for a treat. It's going to be faith affirming for you. So will you join me in welcoming Dr. Tim Clarey?
Well, it's a real pleasure to be here. I don't know, the mic's working? Yeah, it's working great. All right, well, it's a real pleasure to be here. We, at ICR, we go to a lot of Calvary chapels, and we never wear ties. But I had to go to a different church this morning. I just left it on, but it is a pretty tie, Starry Night from Van Gogh. My wife picked it out, so it's her favorite picture. So, tonight we're going to talk about the flood and the truth of the flood. Some of you in the back might want to come closer if you're a skeptic, particularly because you can see the maps better. So come on up. And if my voice is getting a little weak in the middle of the talk, I'm going to pull some water out. I had COVID about a month ago. God pulled me through. When you were singing, God's breath comes into you. He did. He saved me, pulled me through. I didn't have any big issues at all. God was throughout. So it was a lot of people were praying for me, and I felt really bad, but I never really got a high fever, and I just had to breathe deep a lot for a few days. But it was about 5 rough days where I'm like, this is tough. And I don't wish it on anybody, but if you get it, prayer does work, and you can pull through. So it's a pleasure to be here, be back kind of talking again. We're on the end of a 4-day trip. This is our 3rd day of a 4-day tour. We started in Battleground, Washington, Friday and Saturday, and earlier today I was in Sherwood, just down the road. And now I'm here. And so we go back to Sherwood tomorrow to talk for their school in the morning. Then we fly back to Dallas. So ICR moved to Dallas about 15 years ago or so. And many of us joined since that time. And I joined ICR about 8.5 years ago. And I've been doing this research. And it's the greatest research I've ever done. Most of the secular scientists, once I kind of admitted that I was a young earth creationist, they basically said, you're no longer a scientist. Even though I publish papers, I still give talks at their conferences, the secular conferences, and we still present our research. We just can't mention the flood, but we can still show the data. And so tonight I'm going to show you a lot of data, so hang in there. There's a point to it all when you get to, and the main point is there's a lot of people that doubt. Is that working? Well, let's try that again. Let's go back. It worked earlier. Maybe it shut down. Let's go back. We'll try it again. Yeah, no, we skipped it. There's a really cool video here we're trying to get to. I'm going to escape and start over. Sometimes that helps. If it's been off a while, it kind of slows down a bit. Let's try that. Sit up there. I don't want to see me. I'm not the star. You guys lose the cable in the back, or we did practice this. It did work. There's a discussion going on in the back. Well, the flood. The flood is one of those things where people really doubt the flood. People tell you all the time it was a local flood. Who's heard it was a local flood? Yeah, that's what they try to tell you. Secular scientists, the evolutionary scientists, oh yeah, there was a flood, but it just flooded the Middle East. It just flooded maybe the Black Sea. But why would Noah bring birds on the ark if it was a local flood? God says 2 of every kind was brought to the ark. 2 of every kind of land animal. He didn't exclude things. And of course, Noah could have moved. He could have gone to some other country if it was just going to be a local flood. But there was nowhere to hide. There was nowhere to go. This was going to be a global flood, just like it talks about in the Bible. Every time you read that passage in Genesis 6, 7, and 8, it indicates a global flood. There's no indication that it was local. Even in the New Testament, in 2 Peter 3, it talks about a worldwide flood. Yes? So advance it or go back? Go forward? Okay. I'll give it a whirl. Okay, there we go. Is it working? There it is. Woo! Now we're talking. See, that was a cool video. Much better than me. So, just like in the old, if you go back to that, did God say there was a global flood? Satan put doubt in the mind of Eve in the garden. He said, did God say that? And he does the same thing with the flood. So there's a lot of evidence of the flood. We're going to look at this. Many influential leaders, and unfortunately a lot of people at seminaries, deny the global flood because they've well, that's what science says. Science says it's a local flood, so there can't be a global flood. Even though the Bible seems to indicate quite strongly it was a global flood, they don't always want to do it. And they teach a local flood, unfortunately, instead. Evolutionists deny the truth. And in God's word, it says in Psalm 119, thy word is true from the beginning. So it's true from the very first verse. It isn't true from Matthew back. It isn't true from Judges back. It's true from the very first verse. And Jesus himself said in John 17:17, thy word is truth. So God's word is all the truth we have. Science, as you're seeing more and more each month, is not true. You don't know what's true anymore. Unfortunately, science has been shown to be non-science. Not nonsense, non-science. But there's kind of a pun in there because nobody knows what to believe anymore with COVID. Is this true? Is this true? Is this true? Is this true? Masks, no masks. What's the study? And unfortunately, we lost science about 100 and some years ago when the churches gave up fighting. And many of them succumbed to the gap theory. Many of them succumbed to the day-age theories, these great ages for the creation. But when you read the Bible, it's quite clear there is just 6 days. There was morning, there was evening. On the first day, there was morning, evening, the second day. So it's very difficult to interpret that as long periods of time, but still some people do. The global flood is what we'll first look at and spend most of our time looking at. Secondly, we'll look at the flood was catastrophic. But we'll spend about 90% of our time on the first part, because that's where all the data comes in. And finally, a recent flood. We'll look at some evidence that the flood was not that long ago. And the earth is not that old either. But in those rocks, there's evidence of the flood, a recent flood. So we're going to look at this. Do these all phase out after a while? Do they time out? Is that what's happening? Okay. Because this one I need to spend a little time on because my audience will be confused if I don't, because it's kind of a complicated diagram. So here we're looking at these what's called megasequences. And megasequences are these big packages of rock that even are larger than see, it times out on you guys all the time. Is it because I move? Okay. Yeah, keep this one up for a while. Here's the typical names you heard: Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Jurassic, all those names. Well, these are bigger than that. They include several of those. And so we're going to talk about the Sauk and the Tippecanoe, the Kaskaskia, the Absaroka, Zuni, and Tejas. But you can just remember 1 through 6. We're going to go through the chapters of the flood. And these big packages of rock are these big sequences that come in. And they deposit limestone, sandstone, whatever the rocks are coming in, almost like tsunami waves. If you've seen tsunami waves, they come in and there's several waves. It isn't just one wave, it's a series of waves. And these waves are probably bigger than any tsunami waves we have today. They might have been 500 foot high. And tsunami waves move fast. They go 500 miles an hour in the open ocean, as fast as a jet. And then they hit land, they go slower because they're feeling the land, and they build into these big waves of water. And water is very heavy. It can move concrete, it can dissolve away rock with enough water, enough force. And that's what the flood did. It bombarded the earth and eventually covered the whole earth as they go through these sequences as we go along. Can we put that one back up again? Is that possible? Do I go back and then jump ahead? I want to show one more thing, if I can. Maybe not. That's okay. We'll move ahead. Okay. Maybe we'll go back. I never had this problem before. This is new. Where it shows up and then disappears, shows up and disappears. It's slowing down the talk. We might be here till 9. This could be a while. I'm not sure what's happening. You guys ever have this happen before? Oh, maybe it's me. Could be me. I don't understand it. I could log back out again, but it's not. I'm advancing and we'll see if we can prod it along. You need to see the maps eventually. Don't quite understand why it would work. Anybody have any ideas? Pray? Yes, prayer always works. Let's see if we get this to come back on. Ooh, there we go. Okay, let me go back to this one again real quick. And this is a sea level curve, which I actually went to a conference and debated. Early on, the Sauk and Tippecanoe, those Cambrian Ordovician, is supposed to have a real high sea level. So this direction means high sea level, and then it goes down, and they came back up again. And what I'm seeing, the rocks don't support this at all. The rocks support one big increase, one big progressive flood. And that's what you read about in the Bible. In Genesis chapter 7, a progressive flood that moved along. But remember, we believe, according to the Bible, the flood lasted about a year. All these rocks are deposited in about a year very, very quickly as they go through. There's no geologic ages, really. There's just maybe a week or two or a couple of days or a couple of hours in between these sequences that came in. So all these rocks are being brought in, they kind of back off, and then more waves came in, more back off, and more waves came in. And each time, as we'll see, the data shows the rocks got higher and higher, and more coverage, more coverage. So we're going to assume two things. This is data-driven science. This is the way science should be done. I just said, let's just start putting in rock data into a computer database all over the country, and eventually all over the continent. And then the next continent, the next continent, the next continent. So to date, I've got about 5 continents finished. We'll show you 4 tonight. Then I'll show you Asia a little bit at the end, where we just finished Asia. And you'll see that they're all showing the same pattern. So rocks are real. The rocks themselves don't lie. People do. The rocks are real. So we're going to look at the real rocks that are there. If you drilled a well right here all the way down to the crust, I would log in, so many thousands of feet of volcanic rocks in this area. And then maybe there's some sedimentary rocks way down deep. So whatever's here by latitude and longitude, I put that in my database. And I've got almost 3,000 columns around the world now like that, where I show the rocks in all these basins all over the world, offshore, as far as we can see, wherever wells have drilled. And many of this is fairly new. And it's put on the internet so I can access it. But we believe those two things. God's word is true and rocks are real. And so we have over 2,700 columns. I'm approaching 3,000 here as I go through New Guinea. The fountains of the deep, this is where the flood begins. The Bible talks about day 1 of the flood. He says, in the 600th year of Noah's life. Again, God talks about this because it was a real historic event. He talks about days and months in Noah's life because it's not poetry, it's real history. Just like Abraham is real history in the Old Testament. And Joseph is real history. There's no reason to think the first 11 chapters are just stories. But people do say that. Smart, well-meaning Christian people say that. Oh, the first 11 chapters are just stories. But they're not. They're written as history. So it goes on and says, where all the fountains of the great deep broken up, the windows of heaven are open. And we believe the fountains of the great deep, based on the data we've collected in the last 50 years, represent the beginnings of plate tectonics. Some of you are like, oh, that's an evolutionary theory. No, it seems to be true. And John Baumgartner, we'll see in a minute, he did one of the most sophisticated computer programs on one of the government's most sophisticated computers way back in the 90s. And he's still working on this today. And he also survived COVID earlier this year. And he did a lot worse. I mean, he was in and out of the hospital a few times, but he pulled through with a lot of prayer and God's hand. But we believe all these rifts opened up all over the world at the same time. So all these cracks opened up. And you can see some of these cracks are still there today. Well, the plates are only moving this fast today, each year. They're moving very slow. But during the flood, John Baumgartner showed that the conditions would be such that they would move really fast. They move this far per second. So they were humming along at several miles an hour, not just this much per year like we see today. So today we just see the residual effects of the flood. These plates are still moving a little bit. You guys may get an earthquake offshore here because you have a plate boundary right offshore. But most of you are in denial. Who's in denial? See, when I lived in New Orleans or worked down there, I asked them, don't you think a hurricane's ever going to hit? I commuted 25 miles from above sea level to below sea level. And they're like, oh, no, they always miss. And then I got laid off, and then 5 years later, Hurricane Katrina hit. I'm like, they don't always miss. You guys could get an earthquake here. It could be pretty big. Just saying. It's probably not in your lifetime, but it could happen, so just keep that in mind. Say that Clarey, he's nuts, but then some of you are like, maybe. So anyway, this is significant to me. Earth is the only planet in our solar system that has tectonic plates that actually move. Every other planet has cracks, but they didn't move. God made Earth unique in many, many, many ways, and he used, I believe, the mechanism of rapid plate tectonic movement, we call it catastrophic plate tectonics, as the mechanism to move the plates around and bring on the flood, as we'll see. So the Bible goes on to say this, and I'm going to include this in what I call chapters 1 to 3 of those first 3 sequences. Again, don't worry about the names. But the first 3 rock layers, big major sequences deposited, all pretty much show the same thing. So I think this is up to day 40, with a question mark. And it says, it rained was on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. So while that was going on, lots of things were happening on Earth. And here's John Baumgartner, who did this computer model back in 1994. Very sophisticated model showing that subduction would go very, very rapidly. The temperatures would go fast, and you'd get the entire ocean could be created anew, the whole seafloor, within a year of the flood. And I believe that's what happened as well. So here you guys are off Washington, Oregon, with your subduction zone going on. Here's your plate boundary out here. The Juan de Fuca plates being shoved underneath North America still about this much per year. And so this much per year still builds up pressure. And that's why you may have an earthquake. And hopefully it isn't too devastating if it does happen. But it's still happening. These plates going down are feeding the magmas for your volcanoes, because they're melting as they go down. Some of them, a little bit are melting. And that's where these volcanoes come from. So you have your cascades. But you can look under the earth now. Scientists can see deep in the earth. They shot this line across North America and the Atlantic Ocean. They can see these plates are going way down into the earth. They're still visible, way down to 2,000 kilometers down. Anybody know how far 2,000 kilometers is in miles? Okay, 1,000 to be about 600 miles. So that's about 1,200 miles down. So I run enough 10Ks. I used to. I learned 10K, 6.2 miles. Just do the math. All right, it's too late. Let's move on. But anyway, it's still cold. See, this still shows up because it's not that hot. And there's even better images than this where the stuff is still bright blue like the stuff at the surface. All over the world, when we image these tectonic plates, these subducted slabs of ocean crust, we see that they're still cold. If they're moving this much per year over millions of years, they would not still be cold because they would have heated up by now. And that's a problem the secular community has not resolved. But they're still cold because they moved down there quickly just thousands of years ago. So here's those first 3 chapters, those first 3 mega sequences, includes the Cambrian through Mississippian rocks, if you know those. And I believe they were deposited by tsunami-like waves coming in. This is the one off Japan. We're cheating here because that's a seawall, so it really looks worse than it is. But you got to think about tsunami waves that might have been 400 to 500 feet high, bigger than anything we've witnessed. Because the flood was bigger than anything we can imagine. And people ask me all the time, where's the evidence? I'm like, look down. You're generally standing on rocks that are deposited by the flood, or even here the volcanics deposited during the flood. And they're full of fossils. The rocks are, the sediments are, billions and billions of fossils because these waves buried everything alive. So this is the first sequence, what's left of it today. This is where the rocks actually are in blue. If it's white, there are none of these of the first chapter, the first sequence, the Sauk. So you see there's almost nothing across Africa, except North Africa. Very little across South America. Quite a bit across the United States. You're all zooming in over here going, what about Oregon? Is anybody doing that? You don't have any Sauk. You didn't even exist at this point in the flood. This was the West Coast right here, that blue. You didn't exist. California didn't exist. Most of Washington didn't exist. Even parts of Alaska didn't exist. You were smeared on, or they call it accreted, as the flood was subducting underneath North America. You were getting the dirt and debris off the top of the ocean. That's what became Washington. And then you got volcanics on top. So you guys are really kind of screwed up. And so, if your neighbor is a little wacky, that might explain it. But of course, you're not, right? It's them. It's probably me. Anyway, my home state of Michigan was flooded because most of Michigan was a shallow sea. Mostly what's flooding here, and we'll talk about later, this is the shallow seas of the world because all you have is marine fossils. But look at how little is covered here. Look how little is covered here. Look, even Europe, only about a third of Europe is covered, if that. Canada's high and dry. Greenland's high and dry. These are all together at one point. Greenland, Scandinavia, North America. Let's look at North America in a little more detail. This is the bottommost layer. The very first thing deposited as the floodwater started going across North America, and it's a yellow because it's a sandstone. Geologists color sandstones in yellow. It's the same sandstone from my home state of Michigan down to Texas, all across this whole area. Again, you didn't exist. And it didn't flood this area yet. This is higher ground, we'll see later. But it swirled around, depositing the sandstone, a blanket sand that averages maybe the height of this room. How do you deposit this thin of a sand across the entire country of the United States? Secular scientists struggle trying to explain what's called blanket sands, and this is a blanket sand. And you can go to Michigan, my home state, go to the Pictured Rocks in Lake Superior. You can see the same sandstone from the bottom of the Sauk, chapter 1, or Grand Canyon, bottom of the Sauk, chapter 1. And in between, all these data points are wells where they drilled down, they hit it. They drilled down, they hit it. They drilled down, they hit it. It's there everywhere. The rocks don't lie. People do. Keep that in mind. Tippecanoe, this chapter 2, same sort of story. Very little flooding in North Africa, a little bit down here, a little bit more in South America, even less in North America. Hudson Bay's coming in, same exact pattern in Europe. So again, minimal flooding. Canada's still high and dry mostly. Africa's still high and dry mostly. So the highest hills weren't being flooded right away. The flood was progressive, and that's what I'm trying to show you. So remember these pictures. Now look at the Cascade, chapter 3. Same sort of story. Still high and dry. Still, a little bit more in South America. You still have Canada high and dry. Europe has to pick up a lot more offshore into the Arctic Ocean and a little bit more across Moscow now, but still not a lot more. All three of these sequences have the same types of fossils. They're all marine critters. See, they're all marine critters. 99.9% of the fossils in the first three sequences, all over the world, not just here in the United States, all over the world are marine critters because you're only flooding the shallow seas. You didn't evolve from marine animals. That's what was buried first because you're flooding the shallow seas. So humans at this time are going, this isn't good. These waves are coming in, flooding down there, stirring up the water, burying things alive, and you're still back in the land going, the rain's not stopping. The waves keep coming. They seem to get a little bit higher in those first 40 days, but maybe we'll make it. God will pull us through. Well, most of them didn't believe in God. They rejected Noah. When Noah said, there's going to be a global flood, nobody believed him. A lot of people today, when I say there's a global flood, because the Bible says there was and the rocks show it, they're like, I don't believe him. They scoffed today at the flood. They scoffed at the time. Today we have the evidence below our feet. They didn't have any evidence. But only 8 people got on the ark. Only 8 people out of maybe 1 billion people that were alive in those first 1,800 or 1,600 years from the creation to the flood. But humans got so wicked, God has said, I'm going to destroy them all. Anybody that believes in the flood, get on the ark. And there was room for all you. As we say in Texas, all y'all. To get on the ark. You could have got on the ark. The ark was only half full, we figured. With all the animals you needed and everything and the food, it was only about half full. Why didn't more people get on the ark? Because they didn't believe. Today, that door of salvation that they could have walked through before they shut that door and their fates were sealed, that they would be dead within 150 days. Today, Jesus himself took on human flesh, came to earth, died on a cross, that horrific death on the cross, shed his blood for you, for me. All we have to do is repent and believe. And then that door that he opened of salvation is ours. All the people had to do in the time of Noah was walk through that door, and they were saved. Only 8 people did. All we have to do today is believe who Jesus is, that he is God, part of the triune God that we worship. He's the one, his Holy Spirit. Once we become Christians, we get his Holy Spirit in us as well. But if we don't make that decision, what's going to happen when we die? We're going to be eternity in hell. Eternity in hell and damnation. Just like the people in Noah's day had the opportunity to walk through that ark, and they would have been saved from the flood, we now have the salvation through Christ for all eternity. But you have to make that decision while you're alive. The door will shut eventually. Your life will end. And if you didn't make that decision for Christ, you will be cast into the lake of fire. The Bible tells it quite clearly. Chapters 4 to 5, this is when humans started to get really worried because the water is coming higher and higher. And the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased and bear up the ark. So here the ark starts to float. So we know we're flooding the land. And the waters prevailed and were increased greatly upon the earth. The waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth. So it keeps going on and on. The water kept getting higher and higher and higher and higher and higher until it says all the high hills under the whole heaven were covered. And the high hills in those days might have only been 4,000 or 5,000 feet high. They didn't have the big mountains we have. Those popped up late in the flood. There was no Himalayas until the floodwaters were receding. There was no Rockies. There was no Andes. Most geovolcanoes didn't really show up until the floodwaters were receding. So the highest hills might have only been 4,000 or 5,000 feet high, but plenty of water to flood that, as we'll see. So here the ark starts to go. We're moving to the Absaroka sequence now. This is when things get bad and a lot of things show up at once. It's not a coincidence. It's because the water is now flooding the land. It's flooding the swamplands. So you suddenly start moving the continents more. As you move more of the continents and create more seafloor, that seafloor is hot and buoyant like a hot air balloon. And as it's hot, it rises. The seafloor actually rises and pushes the water up. So those tsunami waves that were coming in, hitting the shallow seas, make more ocean crust, are now coming in higher. Make more ocean crust, they're coming in higher yet. And that's why I believe runaway subduction and rapid plate tectonics is the answer to the flood. Here's what we see. We see a whole new seafloor that's younger than all the continents. This is why Washington and Oregon are there, because of this subduction that was going on. That a lot of these colors, the blues and greens, are shoved underneath these two continents. But the youngest is red. The oldest, this blue here and here and here, only goes back to the Absaroka. So the Absaroka really was the key time when more seafloor was being created than ever before. And that's what pushed the water higher and higher like a hot air balloon. So here's kind of what even the secular scientists believe this. They just don't think it happened fast. They think it took place over millions of years. So here we have more seafloor being created, pushes up the floor, pushes the water higher. And the waves came in across the land. Here's a tsunami wave coming in. We don't have a lot of pictures like this because a lot of people die taking these pictures. They're very, very dangerous. The one in 2004 killed over 200,000 people. Most of them didn't feel the earthquake. They go across the ocean. And they come in, what they do is they tear away the vegetation. They tear away the lands, they tear away everything. They knock everything down and strip it away. Sometimes they even wash animals way out to sea as the waves go back out. We found a dinosaur 70 miles offshore, off Norway in the North Sea, 1.5 miles down. They took a core this big and found a dinosaur. That's pretty good luck. They found a dinosaur bone. They could identify a Plateosaurus. How did it get 70 miles offshore and 1.5 miles deep in the mud now if it didn't wash out there rapidly? Because if it just floated out, it would have been eaten. It would have decayed. But it's preserved. The bones are still there. We see the first major coal seams because you're now flooding the land. So we see coal seams all over the earth in Europe, Asia, North America, South America. Those coals in the East Coast. And we see coal, we see land animals show up now, mixed with marine critters. The marine critters are being washed onto the land as the waves came in. Some of the poor marine things got caught in those waves. And so we find sharks up in Montana with the T-Rexes. We find coelacanth fish in Morocco with the Spinosaurs. All those animals, the coelacanths, live at 500 feet down the ocean today. Secular scientists go, oh, they must have been freshwater fish. They look identical to the fish that live 500 feet down the ocean today. They just say that because they find them with dinosaurs. They don't want to believe these are from flood waves washing in. There's a lot of evidence of mixing. The more rocks I look at, here's the Absaroka now. Look how much more coverage there is, particularly in Africa. It's squeezing in. A lot more in Europe, a lot more in South America, even more across North America. Now it's more continuous. Still, Canada's high and dry. Still Central Africa is high and dry. Still part of Brazil is high and dry. So you still didn't flood everything at this point, but you're getting close. Here's what we think the world might have looked like on day 90 of the flood. Here's North America, South America, and Africa still together. Antarctica and India and Australia. What's left of Asia. This is Europe, not much left. So do you think humans were getting desperate at this point? You think they were starting to regret that they scoffed at Noah? There's going to be a lot of people when they die that refuse to accept Christ. I had an atheist read my book, and he's like, oh, Jesus he's a liar. At the end, I said, it all points to Christ as our creator, as our judge, and as our savior. But he scoffed at that and said, Jesus is a charlatan because he doesn't want to believe that he's responsible to a God who created him. But salvation is so easy. Just like walking through the door of the ark would have been so easy, but they were regretting at this point. So let's go to the Zuni when the water went over the top. At least that's what the rocks seem to show. So now we're going to go up to the upper layers of the dinosaurs were all buried as well. And you can see there's a lot more coverage in North America, a lot more in Africa, offshore, South America, and even Africa. There's still areas that are white, so some of you might go, well, but Tim, how could you say it flooded everything, but it doesn't cover everything? It did. But there's been a lot of erosion since the flood. And what does the Bible say? Let's look at North America and look at a couple of these little dots. Let's zoom in. Here's what we see about the high point of the flood. Ideally, it should cover everything. And it did, because how to get these out here? There's a little remnant there from an oil well in the Hudson Bay, a little bit there. That doesn't just show up on its own. You don't have a drone that goes there and drops it. It had to come in from the side. This is the bathtub ring, folks. The bathtub ring is there, showing the flood did go across everything. But how deep did the water get? What does the Bible say on day 150? This is what the world looked like on day 150. The ark's out there, and everything else that breathed air, walked on land is dead. That's what God's word tells us. The water only went 15 cubits over the highest hills. So maybe as high as this ceiling. But it was going 50, 60 miles an hour. Those tsunami waves are still humming right across us, stripped it all down to the crust. All you see in Canada is crust and a few little remnants. All you see in most of South Africa, Central Africa, is crust with a few remnants. And same thing is true in Brazil. And even Greenland, for what we can see. So you don't leave a lot of sediment if you only have 23 feet of water. So there wasn't a lot of sediment deposited in those highest hills. What's there are those little remnants. And then there's been erosion and an ice age since as well. So you don't expect to see continuous coverage when you didn't go that high over the top. God tells us the answers. We just have to look for them. So here we are, the Absaroka and Zuni, we see mixing of marine and land. Again, sharks, the T-Rexes, et cetera. In the same rock layers. They actually dug out Tyrannosaurus rex Sioux, the one that's in Chicago, one of the biggest T-Rexes, and just recently they dug underneath where they dug Sioux out, and they found another shark tooth. Oh, those are freshwater sharks. Everything's a freshwater shark because they find them with dinosaurs. There's freshwater herring all over, but there's no freshwater herring today. There's freshwater coelacanths. There's no freshwater coelacanths today. Who's misinterpreting the data? To me, the data shows those are marine critters that got washed in. And just like the dinosaur that washed out into the North Sea. So how did the dinosaurs survive the early flood? I kind of alluded some of this. Here we have in one of our videos we made on dinosaurs. We don't have any left, but we have this 4-part dinosaur DVD set available online. I'm so glad these are working. Thank you guys in the back. And most of our dinosaurs are found straddling these footprints from Texas up to Montana, and they straddle across here. This is where I believe the dinosaurs were living, in the swamplands. The early rocks that filled in, remember, we were all around here. Michigan, my home state, over here, all around. There was a little thin zone down the middle. And Canada was high and dry. So you can do this on every continent, I have. But this seems to be where the dinosaurs were concentrated in the pre-flood world. This is a shallow sea that flooded early. That's why a lot of the United States flooded early. And this is the uplands. Everything was swirling around. So most humans probably lived up here with the camels and horses and lions and tigers and bears. And what we find out here in dinosaur land is dinosaurs and squirrels and beavers. No lions and tigers and bears, no horses. Those all lived at higher elevation. So I think humans and dinosaurs lived in completely different environments. This is the swampy area, uplands area. Same time, different locations. Because those dinosaurs are big, and they have big teeth. And after Adam and Eve sinned, they started eating each other and anything they could get their teeth on. But they originally were created to eat just plants. And they did. On the ark, they ate plants. I assume Noah brought vegetation as food on the ark, not a side of beef. My home state's all marine critters, early sequences. Then you get the dinosaurs in the middle, and we flew our past to Canada. All right, here we go. And then up in Canada, if there was anything left, but it's been stripped off and spread all over the United States, in the Badlands, for example, we would have found probably a lot of mammals and maybe even some human fossils. But they're stripped right off. So it's kind of an ecological zonation. Early on in the flood, you flood the shallow seas and the swampy areas and the uplands. And you see this in every continent. The same fossil pattern, because it was the same pattern of flooding. As the water went higher and higher and higher, it flooded different environments until it went over the top. Now, all caused by more and more seafloor being made, pushing the seafloor up and up and up. So it's not a coincidence. All those things happen in that Absaroka sequence, or chapter 4 and chapter 5. And then, of course, God remembered Noah. He made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged. It's that wonderful King James word. It means it went back and forth. The fountains of the deep, windows of heaven were stopped, so the plates slowed down. They eventually almost came to a screeching halt, this much per year now. And the waters returned from off the earth continually, and at the end of 150 days, the waters abated. Well, how'd the water drain off? God blew some of it off with the wind, but the seas started to cool. And as the seafloor started to cool, of course, it made these big, deep basins where you have a lot of volcanoes in there. But this is very shallow. This is the seafloor where it's still forming today, this much per year. Same thing through here. Mountain range runs up the mid-Atlantic, but it's very deep on the flanks. So all that new seafloor started to cool. All the energy went into the water, heating the water, which helped bring on the ice age after the flood, which is important to build land bridges so you could walk from continent to continent. So there's a temporary ice age. It's another story. But God brought on an ice age, timed it perfectly, so animals and humans could walk across from North America to Asia and vice versa. Land bridges are very important up here. But that's why the ice had to suck up the water. There's still remnants of the ice age, of course, in Greenland and Antarctica. But here the water was going down. This is the Tejas, that last chapter sequence. You see most of it shifts offshore. You get the Rockies popping up, the Andes pop up, the Alps pop up, the Himalayas actually pop up at this time as well. 80% of the world's mountains all pop up here, including your own Cascades. See how thick it is? The green means thick. That's volcanics. And in the Gulf of Mexico, a lot of water went offshore, carried a lot of sediment offshore as it went along. So let's look at that real briefly. In the bottom of that sequence again, just like we saw in the bottom of the Sauk sequence, we see a sand. We see a tremendous amount of runoff, just like a runoff on a parking lot. You ever see a parking lot drain? It's not a river, it's a mass flow, and that's what happened here. About 2005 or so, oil and gas geologists like me, who were braver than Chevron wasn't that brave. And so Shell and Exxon and some of these other companies went out there and started drilling in deeper and deeper water, 7,000 feet of water, 10,000 feet of water. My guys said, no, we can't look that far offshore, there's no sand. Because they have no model to get the sand that far offshore. Rivers can't do it. There's no idea. So they thought they were going to hit a few feet of, a few inches of sand and then a bunch of clay, and a few inches of sand, a bunch of clay. And they drilled into the sand 1,000 foot of sand. They're like, whoa, this is a Whopper Sand. And then they drilled some more, and it got thicker. It's almost 2,000 feet in places. Huge area. Actually, it's bigger than this now. They just found some more discoveries last year. Where do you get a sand that's 200 or 300 miles offshore that's over 1,000 foot pure sand, almost pure sand all the way through, flat top, flat bottom? There's no transition. It's just like you dumped it there with dump trucks. Way offshore in the Gulf of Mexico, in the bottom of the Gulf, without the flood running off. Secular science is going, we don't know. But we love it because they found 15 billion barrels of oil. So they don't really care as long as they're finding oil. It's amazing when you make money, you don't care. But they don't talk about this in school because they can't explain it. The only explanation they have is one guy put forth a model, and even some of the other secular scientists said that's nonsense. But he put forth a model that said the seafloor must have been closed up here in the Gulf, and it dropped 6,000 feet, over a mile. so they could push the sand out there far enough to get it down that cliff. And it's utter nonsense because it would have filled up with groundwater. There's groundwater below the ocean. You have to drop all the ocean 6,000 feet, and there's no evidence of that. They just made up a story to try to explain this. A story that's based on no data. And if that happened, there should have been all these salt layers, and there should have been all these evaporites, they call them, gypsum layers. There's salt and gypsum in the Gulf, but not at that level. It's all below that. And so there's really no evidence. Even the other secularists said there's no evidence for that. But that's all they have. They have to grasp at straws. But yet they think we make stuff up because we don't believe evolution. I believe the rocks, and I believe God's word. And it explains it. To me, that's the runoff of the flood. And eventually, that high energy flow slowed down and you just get clay being deposited. So a lot of those layers above that sand are full of clay. And that's what we see today. Now there's just a little river called the Mississippi that throws a little bit of clay out there. But this was massive runoff. And again, the Tejas, we see marine critters mixed with more common mammals and things. So some of you don't like maps, you like graphs. Some of you like calculus too, but I forgot all that. I used to be good at it, I forgot it all. Don't use it, you lose it. Here's North America. These are the sequences, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. South America, Africa, Europe. Now, Europe flooded a little bit earlier. When you add them all up, this is the total. It matches Genesis 7 and 8, a progressive flood. Started out slow, minimal coverage, a little more, jumps up, jumps up, jumps up. These are double the amount of any of the earlier ones. This is double the amount of this one. So it isn't like small amounts of thickness they're changing. It's tremendous amount of sediment. And the coverage, I could have showed you the surface area, shows the same exact pattern. So I did a new sea level curve that looks like this. There's no big sea level rise down here like we've been telling our students for years. The rocks don't support it. There's kind of increases. Each time it gets a little higher and higher. Here's day 1 of the flood, we think, based on the Bible. Here's about day 40, when the ark starts to float. You're flooding the land, getting marine and land animals now, and coal show up right here. This is all marine. And then the water went higher, you get the dinosaurs, and you get to day 150, it went over the top, and then the water went down. It's simple when you follow the data. It's simple when you follow what God's word says. Here's Asia. Just came in, and this data was just finished before I went off on a bunch of trips and got sick. Sauk, minimal coverage. Tippecanoe, even less. Kaskaskia, about the same. All these three are pretty similar. Minimal coverage like we saw before. And then suddenly in Absaroka, it jumps way up. This is what's there today in blue and green. In the Zuni, you get more coverage. That's when the water reached its high point. And here, a lot of it shifts offshore. There's massive coal seams off in the South China Sea and 3,000 feet of water, 3,000 meters of water. So multiply times 3 to get the feet. 10,000 feet of water, they're finding coal seams. Secular science says it has to grow out there. How do you grow coal in that deep of water? The land had to sink. There's no evidence of that. There's all up here offshore Russia, off Siberia. Coal seams, they drill oil wells, there's coal seams all over below the Arctic Ocean. How do they get there? They didn't grow there, they had to be washed off. That's part of that runoff of the flood. They're all in the Tejas, their last chapter. So all this, everything I find, everything you see that you don't hear about in the books, you don't hear about in the lectures at the colleges and universities, because they don't even know. They haven't done this. And I write articles about this and throw them in the X and Facts that you guys can get for free. I put them in my book. This continent's not in the book. The first 3 continents are. But how is this not a global flood when we see nearly every continent doing the exact same thing at the same time? We see the same kind of coverages, even in Asia. Starts out minimal, and you go, this is even a little less. But the minimal coverage in those first 3 sequences, when you're flooding just shallow seas and marine critters, and all of a sudden, boom, you're flooding more and you're flooding more. Every continent does about the same thing. How is this not global? Some of you might not, how do you explain this? And even the guys that read my book, they don't believe in creation. They don't believe in a flood. They're like, well, we like your data, but we don't like your interpretation. I'm like, well, the data, this is the rocks. These are the rocks that they drilled, and that's what's actually there. So, of course, it's got to be real, but nobody does this work. This took me 8 years to get this far. 8 years of you guys supporting ICR through your prayers and your financial money, so I have the time and place to do this. And I got the greatest job in the world because I got to tell people that God's word is true, that there really was a global flood. This is a big hang-up for a lot of people. They don't want to believe those first 11 chapters of Genesis. And they don't want to believe in a global flood. But there was a global flood, and the rocks cry out. The rocks show. When you look at the rock data, I don't know how else you explain this other than a global flood. You see the same pattern of fossils all over the world. You see the same coverage of sediments all over the world. A progressive flood, just like Genesis 7 describes. Go home tonight and read Genesis 7 and tell me this doesn't show a progressive flood. I mean, that's when you read it, that's what it shows. And that's what the rocks show. So we see there was a global flood. Let's quickly go through these last two. It was catastrophic. It wasn't a tranquil flood. When we find dinosaur bones, we find them, look what I dug in Thermopolis, in a bone bed about this thick, about the size of this sanctuary. You find thousands of bones all tore apart like a log jam. Some of you remember the log jams from Mount St. Helens erupting. That's what these dinosaur bones were like. All these dinosaurs are buried, 10,000 in one area in Montana, a 1 mile by 3 mile area. 10,000, all ripped apart. But they figured, each foot has so many bones, they calculate out 10,000. Tremendous amounts of dinosaurs, and they're mixed with marine fossils in many cases. Dinosaur and a fish, land plant and fish, eating each other, buried instantly like that. Fighting dinosaurs, the arm of the velociraptor, which is really only this big. Don't believe the movies. Arm of the velociraptor is in a protoceratops about to bite down, buried instantly. 4,000 years it's been waiting to finish that bite. It didn't get a chance to bite. It was right there and buried instantly by those waves. Again, we make the flood small. I think even a lot of the crust melted during the flood from below. You see intrusions of magma and granite all over the place. Everywhere you look in Canada, everywhere you look in the mountain ranges, you see metamorphism. The Earth's crust was scarred just like Christ's hands. The evidence is there, folks. You just got to look. You got to throw away your geology book, take a fresh look like I did, and go, wow. Now, the geology books are good. Just don't believe the millions of years and the slow amounts of time. There's things you got to watch for. Dinosaurs are buried rapidly, like all fossils, buried fast and deep. And then there's places where there's supposed to be millions of years of erosion. This is just 1 million years between these layers. Where's the evidence? This is what we see as we drill wells across the country. I can follow that sandstone, and it's flat. There's no evidence of erosion between many of these layers. Sometimes there's supposed to be 160 million years between one layer in Grand Canyon and the next, and you go to Grand Canyon, you don't see it. You see a flat line. Where are the canyons? All the canyons start at the top. There should be canyons throughout the entire rock record, everywhere, if there's millions of years in between these layers. Where are the canyons? I read an article about this 6 months ago. Where's the canyon here? It fills in with sediment. All we see are the canyons form at the surface today working their way down, just like Grand Canyon. Bone beds, instant burial, lack of erosion between sequences. There's no time in the rocks between layers. Maybe a day or a week or a couple of days, a couple hours. That's about it. You can't tell how fast a brick wall was built, but you know it didn't take millions of years. So let's move to our last point, and that's that the flood was recent, because we got to wind it up. You guys got to get out of here. See, I knew that beginning would slow us down. Recent flood. Let's look at the evidence for that. Back to the bones. Again, you look at the bones. Mary Schweitzer in 2005, they broke open a T-Rex thigh bone or a femur. She dissolved away too much bone, and she found this red stuff, sticky stuff, stuff that stretched like a rubber band and went back. She found, and she studied them and found these are original proteins. The animal was dead, but the original proteins are still there. Collagens are still there. Blood vessels are still there. Flexible blood vessels like yours. Like this dinosaur just died 2 days ago. How can these dinosaurs in Montana with freezing and thawing and freezing and thawing, colder weather than you guys have here, how can they still have original tissues in them? And they do. Even what looks like red blood cells, because they have the nucleus in them. Physical chemists have studied decay of organic compounds for years, projected them out, and you can't even get 1 million years out of them under the best conditions. So how do these things survive 68 million years? How do they survive 150 million years? How do they survive? Some of these go back 500 million years. There's worms that are still original. 115 papers now. And oil is the same thing. Oil is buried marine algae. In Washington, our research labs and the government you're paying for, they made algae into oil in under an hour. Buried algae, look at this kick. This is fracking. This is what annoys the green people. They don't want to find more oil. But God provided the oil in the flood knowing that we would need it. God provided the coal in the flood knowing we would need it in the last century or two. Now, again, it's going to run out. And we got to do other energy sources. But right now, we're using this because it's plentiful and cheap. And it's reliable. If you have an electric car, much of the electricity in the United States is still provided by coal. Well, 40% of it's from coal. So you drive around a car, it's 40% powered by coal. You may go, oh, no, I only buy from a place that has windmills. Well, that might be true. But overall, a lot of our electricity still comes from coal. And Texas found out coal was more reliable than wind last winter. And a lot of people paid the price, including Ted Cruz, who ran off to Cancun. And he had to come back, tail between his legs. But oil is organic. Oil should biodegrade, and it does. Oil can't be millions of years old. I worked for the oil company, and they said, the oil in Wyoming is 150 million years old. 150 million years old. Just sitting there waiting for you to drill into. And they drill the oil is case. See, it is. All they did was found oil. But the oil can't be old because it would have biodegraded. Oil spills are bad, but they clean up naturally by bacteria. The BP spill cleaned up. The one off California will clean up. You sure you want to skim away a lot of it because it harms the environment. But once you clean it up, bacteria loves it. Bacteria is underground too. And it's really hot. You go to Yellowstone, you see a lot of colors because that's the bacteria that live at different temperatures, right up to the boiling point. Underground, there's constant groundwater flow, bringing in new bacteria. And almost all of our oil is biodegraded in some respects. The tar sands in Canada, really biodegraded. That's why they're just tar. There's oil all over the world, buried in the flood. Most of it's biodegraded. In the back, we have a few of these. Bruce will sell you. Bruce has come up to strangle me to cut me off. He's telling me I have no time left. But I don't want to just stop. This was new in 2020. I wrote it the year before. Pecked away with my 2 fingers for 4 or 5 months. Don't you feel sorry for me? I can't type. But I do 20 words a minute. Anyway, this came out. It got honorable mention by World Magazine as a readable science book. So it was in the top 5 or 6. I was pretty happy to see that. And I was more happy to see this. Gary Parker, he used to work for ICR. Some of you might have heard of him. He says, you also show science and scripture belong together. And that was the thing. Just like tonight, I want to show you what God's word says, what the rocks show is a perfect match. And here's the real key, both pointing to one true creator God. They're both pointing to Jesus. God's word points you to Jesus. If you read through God's word, you'll see, I need a Savior. And then, oh, there is the Savior. I just have to believe. And hopefully this research I'm doing points you to there really was a global flood, but there was a way out. And ultimately it points to Christ because he is our way out. He's more than a way out. He's what gives us joy, what gives us hope. And we're going to be with him forever and ever and all eternity if we accept him. It's a simple thing to do. But we have to humble ourselves. We can't do it. We can't work our way to heaven. Jesus did it all. What did he say on the cross? He said, it is finished. All of our sins we ever did, all the sins we're ever going to do for everybody, he took it upon himself. And he willingly did this. God loves us so much. Again, I told the audience this morning, I said, I didn't know what unconditional love was till I had kids. Then you love those kids no matter what. God loves us the same way. But he sees some people just reject him. Like the people that didn't walk through the ark. There's a video we don't have any of these either. Bruce, we sold them all, I guess. But you can go online. There's a shorter version of this talk. If you go online, it's 40 minutes about the flood. This is where those DVD or those video clips came from, this 4-part DVD set. It's available online at icr.org as well. And then my little Henry book my wife and I wrote about Henry here, see? And he gets on the ark, and there's his sisters, and see, they have little eyelashes. But in reality, it's the boys that have the eyelashes, not the girls. And girls are jealous of the boys' eyelashes. And then there's the mom. And there's a second book that just came out in the series, too, where he's now off the ark. And you learn Bible facts and science facts. My wife was tired of working at a Christian school, having to cross out the millions of years with a Sharpie. So she lets write a few books. So we have some children's books as well. So some of the Henry dolls are out there, but not the books. And this is the best book we sell, I think, is $10. Covers a little bit of everything. But you have to go online for this, too. But if you got a child going to college or high school, public school, or even Christian schools, because a lot of them teach evolution. Or if you got grandkids going to Christian schools, because a lot of them teach evolution. Or public schools for sure, they're going to get bombarded. And this is the type of books that got all of our science staff at ICR through. We all went to secular schools. We all heard the lies. And it's so easy to just, okay, the worst billions of years old. Can't I just say that and believe my Bible too? Yeah. But then you're kind of not believing the whole Bible. I think the Bible is clear. In Genesis 1 to 11, there was a global flood, and the earth is young. It's the clarity of Scripture that people miss out on. These old earth guys are our biggest critics. You know, they say, well, we believe God's word too, but I'm like, but do you believe the clarity that you can read it for yourself and understand it? And when you read it for yourself, it shows the earth is young. It's all about the clarity. That's what our president at ICR is trying to get across to people. It's not just saying you believe God's word, because they'll say they do. But they kind of say, well, I'll help you interpret those first 11 chapters. We don't need anybody to help. God wrote that for you. You know, we may not understand everything. Some of the Bible's confusing, but it's clear enough the earth is young, and that's what the rocks support. So if you get a chance, this covers everything. It's our cheapest book, $10. Go online and get that. And then if you don't do anything else tonight, and you're leaving here in disgust because you're like, I'm tired of that guy, sign up for Acts and Facts and see what other scientists at ICR have to say, because there's some good stuff out there. This is free. We don't give your name to anybody else. And a lot of you did sign up on the way in, but those of you, you're in a big hurry to get home, spend the time to at least sign up. And you get the magazine every month, where you can get all the information of speakers coming to Washington, Oregon. If we come back this area, you might want to hear us again, so you can throw things at us. But it's been a pleasure. Sorry I went a little long, because we had some problems at the beginning, so that's my excuse. I blame everybody else because I'm the youngest in my family. But it's really me. I'll take the blame. But thank you very much. I'm going to turn it back over to the pastor and I'll let you get after it. Sorry about that. You're welcome.
Great.